Howdy do. Alright, so last time we left off with Spider Man plummeting to his death because the vulture dropped him. So that's where the last issue left off. On with the review! The year opens up with Spider Man falling to his death, and only Spider Man would joke around while plummeting to his death. He's just like, oh man, bad luck I have. And, I've noticed he talks to himself in the third person a lot. Maybe he's crazy. Maybe. I don't know, I just think it's kind of funny. Anyway, to save himself, he makes a webbed net when he gets closer to the ground. And it launches him back up like pulling a rubber band, kind of. One thing I noticed, he goes to the lab in the university where the vulture was hassling one of the students, and it's like there's a big mess and everything, and then he meets this one professor, and the professor says to him, I'm cutting a lot out of the conversation, but at some point he says, as the French say, such is life. But I think he should have said either, as the French say, c'est la vie, which is the French way to say such is life, or he should have just said, well, as they say, such is life, because, really, like, the French don't say such is life, they say c'est la vie. I'm picking hairs here, but, I gotta talk about something. The vulture comes back during this story, and he's in jail, so Spider-Man's like, it's impossible, he's in jail, how can he be flying around? And it turns out that it's the professor at the university that he actually meets in the room when he comes back, and it's some horrible mutation experiment gone wrong, and he gets fused to the vulture costume, and it makes his face all nasty and vulture-like. And I liked it. It was a pretty good issue. They're definitely delving more into the mystery aspect of storytelling, like kind of the detective side of things. And Peter actually has to do some snooping around to figure these things out. Then the next issue, we meet the Jackal, he's pretty cool when you first meet him. And he hires the Punisher to kill Spider-Man. And, the Punisher's always awesome. And also in this issue, MJ is kind of a horrible person, because she doesn't want to hang out with Peter anymore because he's been not much fun since Gwen died. Yeah, so, I don't know. One thing I like is, I don't remember when it started, but they've started having Peter and Spider-Man say, oh boy, like one word, O-B-O-Y. Like when they're surprised by something or they see something's about to go horribly wrong, it's just like, oh boy. I don't know, it's just a very perfect way of, reacting to something like that. But that issue, that was pretty good. The Jackal is definitely cool. I want to see more of him. And he doesn't really get to do much in that issue. He's just kind of like, hey, Punisher, go do this. Go kill him. And then at one point he scratches Spider-Man in the back of the head, and then so they can run away or whatever. And then the next issue, there's like this heist thing going on, and Spider-Man breaks it up, and the one guy is talking to him like, "Hey, I can't say the name of our boss because people die," and then he starts to say Hammerhead, and he like it looks like he short circuits, and like his brain just like fizzles out, and then his eyes start smoking. Yeah, that happened. It's very similar to like those brain bomb things in Mission Impossible 3. It seems kind of like that. They can't say Hammerhead or else their brain explodes. The Jackal comes back. He's trying to talk Hammerhead into joining forces against Spider-Man, but Hammerhead won't have it. He's like, "No, I'm gonna do it myself. No, I'm gonna do it myself." But the Jackal's still pretty cool. I don't know. Every time the Jackal shows up and he's like in the talking and stuff, like I don't know, just something about him I like him as a villain. Definitely one of the best lesser known villains. And we finally get to meet the Spider-Mobile in this issue. And it's pretty ridiculous. It's pretty much just a dune buggy, and it can project his spider signal, and it can shoot webbing. And around the outside, on the trim, it's just like the red webbing part of his suit. Like it's that design. And then the other parts are blue on the exterior. And it has Spider-Man's face on each hubcap. And yeah, it's maybe one of the most unnecessary things ever. I guess it could keep him from getting tired, but he's Spider-Man, so he really probably wouldn't get tired much. It takes a lot for him to get tired. But yeah, his reaction upon seeing it was, that's what I call a fiasco. So I'm thinking that they didn't make this Spider-Mobile just, because they thought it was cool. I think they made it because it's like not cool. I think they're joking about it because even the cops come by and they're like, "Man, what is this monstrosity?" So I think they're having a fun time, making fun of it. Apparently this is a Christmas issue. It mentions Christmas in the splash page, like right after you open the cover, like it mentions Christmas, like, "Hey, there's a Christmas bonus in here." And MJ even says, it's only a few days until Christmas, and then they go to a Christmas party, and it's just like weird because it was definitely published in March. So I don't know what's going on, but yeah, maybe they were just having a Christmas issue in March. But yeah, we finally find out what all the Canada business was about. And yeah, I mean, Spidey finds out something the reader doesn't know, and then he follows up on it, and he goes to Doc Ock's mansion, where he finds Doc Ock marrying Aunt May. Yeah, and then Hammerhead breaks in and, ruins the wedding, and everybody's, it's just mayhem, complete chaos. Yeah, it's not just Doc Ock marrying Aunt May. There's more to the story than that, but we don't know that yet. It's just Spider-Man knows it, but he hasn't said anything about it. The next issue, Hammerhead is using stun pellets as he assaults these people at the wedding, but I feel like he would probably just kill people. He just kind of seems like that kind of guy. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I just think he would. And Spider-Man is definitely becoming more of like a detective kind of mystery series now. or at least, there's more detective-like stories than just, the straight up like action stories that they have been mostly. So yeah, definitely digging Jerry Conway's stories and his writing. It's definitely good. But yeah, in this second part of this Hammerhead issue, or like this, like finding out what's going on in Canada issue, we find out that Aunt May has inherited the most modern, privately owned atomic processing plant in the world. And that's what the guy in Canada wanted to talk to her about. He was a lawyer, and apparently he just wanted to tell her what she'd inherited, or maybe the dangers of her marrying Doc Ock or something like that. Because Spider-Man says that Doc Ock's plan is to marry Aunt May so that her stuff would become his stuff, and then kill Aunt May so that her stuff would be left to him. So he could own this atomic processing plant. I really don't understand how or why Aunt May would inherit such a thing, or who she knows who would ever have this thing. But I guess the story just needed her to inherit this, so that's what happened. I really like the snow scenes in just in general. Like whenever there's a snow scene, it seems like the art is just really awesome, and like I like it. I really like it. And then at the end of the issue, Doc Ock and Hammerhead are killed in a nuclear explosion because Hammerhead was being an idiot in a nuclear breeder and using his head but not his brain. One thing I thought was kind of funny and strange was that the sound they had for the helicopter taking off or landing or whatever was bracka bracka tracka chow. I don't know how that equals a helicopter sound. Like I get the bracka bracka part, like bracka 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 bracka, but the tracka chow, don't really know how that fits in. Again, splitting hairs. All right, in the next issue, this one was kind of weird as far as the narration goes, because it was constantly saying like, all right, be prepared for Act 1 now that the prologue is over, and now Act 1 Scene 1 is done, so let's move on to Act 1 Scene 2. And, so much for Act 1 Scene 2, let's jump cut. It's just like, really, that's not necessary. They've done kind of that before, but, like, just maybe once or twice in the issue, like, we'll say, like, all right, now that all that's out of the way, like, let's move on to the next scene or something like that. Like, but in this one, they were announcing every single scene and saying, all right, like, now the curtain comes down. Like, now the curtain comes up on Scene 3, It's just like, whatever. Yeah, so in this issue, Ned Leeds responds to a call from some old lady about a thief living in the house that she's in. And when he gets there, he gets out of the car, he's walking up to the house, and then it looks like the entire house explodes. When I looked at the panel, that's what I saw. I saw the entire house exploding in front of Ned Leeds. For those of you who don't know, Ned Leeds is a reporter at the Daily Bugle who's married to Betty Brant. Anyway, so yeah, it looks like the entire house explodes, but then he's able to go into the still completely intact house. I don't know, I guess it was just maybe one room or something like that. But they drew a really huge explosion. Like, they drew a big one. There was no one room exploding. Like, they drew a big one. But yeah, it turns out the Molten Man is back. The Molten Man, I like him. We met him a few times early on in the series, around 30-ish, like somewhere around there. So Spider-Man shows up and finds Ned Leeds, and the Molten Man is there, and he fights him, and the Molten Man is like burning hot, and then Molten Man runs away, and so Spider-Man takes Ned Leeds to the hospital, and the doctor says that he has radiation poisoning, and then Peter's walking out the door, and he drops in the hallway, and he suspects that he might have radiation poisoning as well, but since he's Spider-Man, he's going to recover pretty quickly. So in the next issue, we see a pretty awesome showdown between Molten Man and Spider-Man. The final fight kind of reminded me of the Sandman fight in the subway in Spider-Man 3, because the Molten Man and Spider-Man were fighting in a subway. They were on a subway car, and then they moved outside of the subway, and then they were fighting there, and then, yeah, so. And anyway, Liz Allen, one of Peter Parker's friends from high school, comes back and, wants to talk to Peter. And she's the Molten Man's stepbrother. We found that out way back when he first showed up. It used to be that his skin was just covered in metal, but now the metal has grafted to his skin and kind of become his skin, and his body temperature is now over 300 degrees. He burns footprints into the ground wherever he walks, and he can burn people just by touching or punching them. And yeah, he ends up dying by diving after his backpack of medical supplies into some water, and I guess, cooling too rapidly. But it was really only a matter of minutes before he was going to die anyway, because his metal skin was deteriorating too quickly. And in the next issue, for a while, Jerry Conway has been penning the stories after Stan Lee left. And I think his stories in general are better than Stan Lee's. They have a more consistently good quality to them. But in the next issue, it starts out with Peter thinking about everything that has happened in the last 5 issues. They seriously take at least 2 pages, maybe 3 or 4, to explain everything that has happened in the last 5 issues. And I really don't understand why they need to do this, because the story that happens doesn't even require us to know what happened in the last 5 issues. Maybe they just wanted people who were picking this up for the first time to go back and buy those. I don't know, maybe. But I just think it's really completely unnecessary. But yeah, in this issue, Harry finds out that Peter is Spider-Man. And he also thinks that Spider-Man killed his father, so... In this issue, there's a new villain called the Tarantula. And he hijacks this boat that Peter and his friends are on. And the Tarantula and his gang are from some South American country, which is never named. It's just South American. But yeah, I can't really take Hispanic villains seriously, because I think it reminds me of the Jesus from The Big Lebowski or Puss in Boots from Shrek. So it's kind of, I don't know. I always just imagine them being comedic like that, and it just kind of throws me off. But yeah, the Punisher comes back, so that's pretty awesome. But of course, he messes things up in the first place because he thinks that Spider-Man tricked him and that he actually did kill Norman Osborn. But then, he figures out that Spider-Man's innocent and it's, the Tarantula's a bad guy that needs to be dealt with. And, yeah. So, it continues into the next issue. And, the Tarantula actually has a pretty cool backstory. He first worked with a revolution group, like militia kind of thing. But he just liked killing people just for the sake of killing them. So the group kind of kicked him out because they wanted to kind of stick to their cause. And so he started working for the government, and they gave him the tarantula suit. And he also has like these boots with knives on them, kind of. And they're like his tarantula sting, and they have some kind of poison in them or something. So, he has a pretty neat little gadget there. But yeah, when he worked for the government, he killed a guard for not letting him, hurt the prisoner more. And yeah, so killed a guard and then gets kicked out of the working for the government. And so he starts his own group and then begins some crazy shenanigans. Basically, Spider-Man and the Punisher track him down, and Spider-Man beats the crap out of him, and, yeah, end of story. The next issue, Pete and MJ are on a date, actually, so, then, when they get back to Peter's apartment, MJ starts opening the door. Peter gets something with his spider sense and is trying to stop her, but her turning the key activates a bomb and it blows up. So yeah, then she gets taken to the hospital by some paramedics, and then Peter goes to the Green Goblin's warehouse because he has some suspicions. And then he fights the Green Goblin there, and he's almost killed, but then the Green Goblin runs out of power for his finger blasters, and then he goes away to get more power or something. And that saves Spider-Man's life for the moment. So then it continues into the next issue where, Green Goblin continues his tirade. So this issue starts out with Green Goblin robbing some truck, and then it goes into Peter Parker, looking for Green Goblin. So the Green Goblin sets a trap for Spider-Man in this issue. Again, it's kind of similar to the Dark Knight a little bit. See, the Green Goblin has kidnapped Flash Thompson, Mary Jane Watson, and Aunt May. And each one is in a different part of New York. And only one of them has a real bomb strapped above them. And it's going off in like 6 minutes or something like that. So the other two have fake bombs. And Spider-Man can only save one. Or he can only go to one of them before the bomb goes off. And so if he chooses the wrong one, then somebody dies. So he chooses Aunt May because he remembers something that the Green Goblin said about somebody close to him dying, or like the closest person dying or something like that. So then he saves Aunt May, and then he comes back and knocks Harry unconscious and takes off his costume, takes off his Spider-Man costume, and then takes off Harry's costume, and the police come and find, just Peter and Harry there. So Harry tries to tell the cops when he wakes up that Peter's Spider-Man. Like, he immediately says, like, Peter Parker's Spider-Man. And then Peter's like, ooh. Then Harry's like, I know that because I'm the Green Goblin. And then the cops are like, yeah, the Green Goblin wouldn't be that young, so you're kind of crazy. So they, yeah, I guess they send him off to a mental hospital, I assume, because I don't think they really said, but, I mean, they made it sound like he was just crazy, so I'm sure they would only do that. Because at that point, they didn't know he did anything wrong, really. In the next issue, Peter has to go stay with Flash Thompson because, first of all, his apartment has been exploded. And then on top of that, his landlord comes in and says, listen, I'm kicking you out because your apartment exploded. Like, I don't know, it was kind of ridiculous. Like, the landlord kicks him out because, I don't know, it made it seem like Peter blew up his own apartment or something like that. But, yeah, anyway, he's staying with Flash, and there's this guy in the area called Mindworm, and he psychically feeds on people's minds and souls, and at night he makes them walk to his house like zombies. And then when Peter moves in, the Mindworm can sense like his Spider-Man-iness, and so he can like sense like this huge like emotion or something like that, and it's like stronger than everybody else, and he's like, I need to feed on that man. Yeah, Spider-Man sees everybody walking around like zombies, and so he goes over to the Mindworm where all the people are walking to, and he fights him until he breaks his spell over the people, and then the police come. It was an alright issue. I mean, it was pretty fun. And then the next issue, sometimes these issues say Marvel Tales starring Spider-Man instead of The Amazing Spider-Man. So, I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. It kind of confuses me sometimes. But it's definitely, the right one because it picks up exactly where the last one left off, so whatever. Yeah, so it starts out with Peter looking for an apartment of his own, and he finds one. It's $110 a month in New York City for an apartment. Yeah, so that's 1974, $110 a month. Yeah, so in this issue, the villain is the Grizzly Bear, and he attacks the Daily Bugle because of a grudge against Jameson. Spider-Man takes a dive while fighting him and throws a spider tracer on him, and then the Grizzly Bear leaves, and then after following him, the Spider-Man changes into Peter and knocks on the door, and he gets a sock in the gut when he walks in and wakes up to find the Jackal. And I must say, I'm really happy that the Jackal is back, because I'm really excited to see more of him. Like, right before reading this issue, I was actually thinking, man, I wonder when the Jackal's going to come back, because he was pretty awesome. And the thing is, like, he really hasn't done anything in all the times that we've seen him. Like, we've seen him maybe, like, I think 2 issues now, 2 or 3, but he hasn't done anything except the only thing he's ever actually done is, like, he hired Punisher, and he tried to team up with Hammerhead, and he scratched Spider-Man on the back of the head, and, like, he really hasn't done much at all. But he's just awesome. I don't know. Like, I'm really excited to see him utilized more and actually do things. Like, I don't know. Just something about him. He's like he just looks terrifying, and I think if he actually does do something, it will be pretty crazy. Because he kind of seems like a Joker type, like, just kind of like wants to cause chaos, maybe. But yeah, he's pretty cool. Excited to read more, because that's where this year leaves off. Next year, we'll start with the continuation of Peter Parker sitting there in front of the Jackal. Excited to find out what happens. This has been a pretty good year for Spider-Man. I really enjoyed these stories. Yeah, I mean, Jerry Conway's pretty good. Good at writing. And the art's getting better all the time. Yeah, it's just yeah, very good. So I will see you with the year 1975, issues 140 through 151. So, see ya. Big one. Spider-Man-iness. I need to feed on that man. Bracka, 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 bracka.